Yeah, I broke it again. This video is sponsored by our damn self, so go check out garage23.net to see our first ever merch drop, which includes this Kaiju Heavy hoodie. This hoodie is awesome because it has 100% cotton outer and a polyester lined inner, so it's nice and tough, durable on the outside, but soft on the inside, and it doesn't have any drawstrings, so it doesn't get you killed in a shop like this. We're gonna have this hoodie and 2 shirts dropping, one of this design and another one of R34 chilling in its original home of Fukuoka Prefecture. So check those out and use promo code DOYOURBEST for 20% off our introductory merch drop. And remember, all your purchases go toward helping your local impoverished car enthusiasts, i.e. us, and helps us provide more content for you guys to watch. So remember, thank you and always do your best. All right, so for anyone that's new here, this is our 1998 Nissan Skyline. It is a GTT model with the RB25 turbo engine, and we've already broken it twice. So for a little backstory, we've already had to tear this engine apart, took the cylinder head off, had it resurfaced, put a new head gasket, put it back together, and it runs again. But I had some suspicions that what happened wasn't entirely my fault. I mean, it's completely my fault, but due to circumstances beyond my knowledge. So this is the head gasket that we took out. Ever since I saw that, I didn't think this was due to overheating. This looked more like lean damage or something. And I asked a couple people and just no context, show them this and what caused this. And they're like detonation / lean air fuel mixture. I'm pretty sure I was right, and that got me back to thinking the car always had like this weird noise on throttle, and I kept thinking it was a boost leak. Some people, when they rode in the car, they're like, that doesn't sound like any boost leak I've ever heard. So that also made me kind of nervous, but it still ran pretty good. I didn't think too much of it, but after that happened, I definitely started to look into it more, and I was technically right. It was a boost leak. The hose or the piping coupler that went to this inlet hose was loose, and there was a slight boost leak there. But the bigger issue was the car was detonating the whole time we've had it. The only time it didn't detonate was when it still had Japanese gas in it from the port. That ran out pretty quickly, and then we started filling it with 91 octane here. Ever since then, every time you would hit boost, it just started making this like marble in a tin can kind of sound. And I wasn't entirely sure what it was, because I never heard detonation like that before. I mean, we live in Arizona, so it gets hot in summers, and you hear some detonation when you take off from a stoplight or whatever, and it didn't really sound like that, because that's usually low throttle and mild acceleration. This was at like heavy throttle in boost, so it didn't quite sound like what I thought detonation sounded like. But after the freaking engine blew up, then I started to try and the first thing that I did was try to like look for the boost leak, which I found that, but then I started chasing some other hoses around the engine bay, and that led me back into the cabin, and I found that we actually have an impul tuned ECU, and that's when I was fairly certain that we had a tuning issue or a fuel quality issue, I guess. Being that this car basically has a chipped ECU, it was most likely tuned to run on 100 octane, and we don't really have 100 octane here. It's also not quite equivalent. I'll put the chart of the octane ratings here, but basically we don't have anything at the pump that compares to Japanese 100 octane. I think here it's something like 95 or 96 octane, something like that. I started asking around and see if I could find anything or any place that carries race fuel, because I know that's at least 100 octane. And so we spent like a whole day driving around, because I had already filled this up with 91 octane. So I had to like at least get that down to half a tank. So a few friends gave us some leads, and we found a couple of places that sell E85 and race gas, but they didn't say what the octane rating was, so I didn't feel super comfortable with that. So we kept looking, and ironically, right next to the racetrack here, there's a Sunoco pump that carries 100 and 110 octane. After I spent like 80 bucks in race gas, I filled it up from half a tank, so half a tank of, I actually put 110 octane, so I figured 91 plus 110 should equal out about 100. And keep in mind, before we weren't even able to hit like 12 PSI without it pinging like crazy. And so after I filled it up with 110 and just, switch the car around a bit and make sure everything was like mixed together or whatever. And I set the boost controller back to 13 PSI and did a pull on the freeway. No more detonation. The car was super smooth, super solid. It held boost. It was actually able to hit 13 PSI. And so I was like super stoked, because it was a simple solution. I mean, I wish I had known that beforehand so I didn't blow up the engine most likely, but yeah, what I thought was the hose that burst and let out all the coolant and overheated the engine. That wasn't the case at all. What happened was the detonation weakened the head gasket and compromised it. All the combustion pressure leaked out into the cooling system, and that's what burst the hose. So it's kind of backwards. And that was one of the things I thought was weird. Like, the car shouldn't have been able to overheat that quickly. Like, I wasn't, you know, being that hard on it. I was just 4th gear, mild throttle. It shouldn't have overheated that quickly. And it wasn't. It was because that low throttle or 4th gear and mild throttle, that kind of puts too much load on the engine where there's not enough like airspeed to prevent detonation. So a detonation event occurred and blew the head gasket and led to that whole deal. But now that we figured it out, I was driving it around for a couple of days, just actually enjoying the car because it was actually running properly now. And I turned the boost up, of course, to see, you know, where I could get it to sit comfortably. And I had it at about 15 PSI. I was driving it like that for about 2 days and it was fantastic. I actually set it at 15 PSI because that's what I had my RB25 at before that I used to have in my S14. So I was like, this is the exact same turbo because I had an R34 Turbo in my S14's RB25. And I drove that for months that way on 15 PSI, no problems, no nothing. So I was like, okay, this should be fine too. So I put it at 15 PSI and I noticed it would hit 15, but then drop back off to like 13, 12 in the higher RPMs. So I suspected something was wrong, but I wasn't really sure what. And so I just kept driving. Eventually 2 days later, after, you know, another like test pull, I made a turn and then tried to accelerate and I had like no power. Oh no! Son of a bitch! I thought, you know, just blew a coupler off the intercooler or something like that. But it ran too good for that because usually when that happens, like the car will stall and die and it'll be hard to like even drive it. But this was still like idling and driving fine. It just didn't have power. And then I noticed the boost gauge would just go straight to 0 when you'd floor it. So I was like, I was just kind of dreading like all the scenarios in my head of what is wrong with it. I was just hoping it was a intercooler hose, but we got back here, checked everything out. Everything was still tight. There was no leaks, there was no nothing, but the car didn't make any boost. So I decided to pull everything apart, and then so I could get a good look at the compressor wheel. And with the engine running, the compressor wheel was not moving at all. So turbo's broken, which isn't a surprise. I mean, these turbos are like ceramic and plastic, so it's a miracle it's lasted this long. But the wheel isn't actually seized. You can see it like kind of move, but what I suspect happened is the turbine on the backside just blew apart or fell off completely. So the exhaust isn't actually turning the compressor anymore. Basically, we need a new turbo. Luckily, Maxpeeding Rods reached out and came to the rescue and sent us a turbo. Let's go check it out. All right, so chances are, if you've been into cars in the past, anytime in the past 10 years, you've probably heard of Maxpeeding Rods, and chances are you probably haven't really heard anything bad about them. My first experience with them was actually through a set of coilovers. The 350Z that we have, I got 2 sets of coilovers in a trade. I don't even remember what I traded from, but one of them was a set of Tane street basis coilovers, so the ones that are like the super base model Tanes that don't even have top hats. And the other set was the Maxpeeding Rods set. I actually thought they were K-Sport coilovers at first because they're like the same kind of orange color. I read the top hats on them and it said Maxpeeding Rods. And so naturally I put the Tanes on first because, you know, that's an actual name brand that I'd heard of and it's supposed to be pretty good quality. The Tanes didn't go low enough and they also rode like crap, which I was pretty surprised about. So eventually I was like, yeah, I might as well throw these Maxpeeding Rods coilovers on because I got them for free basically. So I put those on and I was like actually really surprised that they rode better than the Tanes. And they didn't go a whole lot lower, but it was low enough to where the car sat where I wanted it. And so I actually drove the car like that for a good part of a year before I ever like upgraded to, I think, BC coilovers. And yeah, like I didn't have any complaints and I was like amazed how cheap they were. And so fast forward to now, they're making like different kinds of coilovers and they've even started making turbos and even rods, as their name implies. They make connecting rods. But this is gonna be the first turbo that I've seen from them. And this comes in under 200 bucks. So I don't even know where to set my expectations, right? Because like, even if this is complete garbage, like right out of the box, like for 100 bucks, like you almost can't complain. But supposedly this is good for up to 500 horsepower. And this is a bolt-on solution to the RB turbos, which if any of you guys have had RB25s before, you'll know the turbos are garbage. I mean, they're made of plastic and ceramic. Even if you have one that isn't broken, it will be broken. Rebuilding those is an option, but it also costs more than this turbo cost. So I figured this is a good chance to give them a shot and see how well this turbo works. So it's a factory replacement, but it has upgraded wheels. So that's another thing I want to check out, is see what exactly the differences are once we get our broken turbo out and see how it measures against this one. I mean, at first glance, it looks nice. I mean, everything, you know, there's really no shaft play. It spins smoothly. The wheels aren't made of plastic like the stock one, so it's already a good start. One thing I noticed, it doesn't really have any stampings. So like most factory turbos will have like numbers as far as like the aspect ratio and trim of the compressor and stuff like that. This doesn't really say anything other than Maxpeeding rods, which that's actually a nice thing to see because it shows that they're proud enough of this to put their name on it. Whereas like a bunch of Japanese companies or Chinese companies, they don't bother putting any sort of name on it at all because it's just this generic thing that some random company spits out. But it's nice to see that they actually want to commit their name to a product. Let's see what else we got in the box. It was also really nicely packaged. It has this like really dense expanding foam in there, and it was wrapped in, you know, your plastic bag with the covers on the compressor and everything. We got a nice fancy sticker. We got some gaskets for the turbo, oil restrictor. That's pretty important. I'm not quite sure what that's for. We got some promotional material, turbo troubleshooting tips, installation instructions, and a little promo booklet of all their like products and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it looks pretty nice. So first thing we got to do is get our stock turbo out of there and see what the damage is. So let's go get started with that. All right, so we'd already kind of started taking everything apart just to diagnose what was wrong with this thing. And it was just the intercooler pipes and the factory intake, which this, you know, it's simple. It's just hose couplers. The factory intake though, did not do so well. So for whatever reason, whoever put this back on at some point had like glued it to the turbo or like siliconed it or something. And I could not get this off without destroying it. So this is not gonna be reusable, which kind of works out because I noticed the inlet on the compressor of the Maxpeeding Rod Turbo is 3 inches, which is bigger than the stock one. So that's one of the slight complications with this install, is that you're gonna have to figure out some other kind of solution for your intake, which we'll get to that later. But for now, let's keep unbolting stuff. Magnet dish from Harbor Freight. I've always wanted one of those, but I never bought one. I don't know why. Want to be careful with this because if you drop it, you're probably going to ruin it. That went smoother than I thought. 3 rusty bolts later, and the downpipe heat shield is off, or the elbow heat shield is off. Now we should be able to get to the rest of the turbine housing bolts. I was 100% sure I was gonna bust my knuckles on that, but we're doing pretty good. I didn't want to get on the floor today. I can see way better from down here. Okay, so we got the turbo elbow off, and now I just need to get all the lines off. First of which is the oil feed line, which is a 17. It's nice and easy up top here. Then the coolant lines, it's a 24 mil, and one of them's easy to get to right here. And of course we're making a mess already. That's one, and the other one's on the other side, which doesn't look like we can quite get to it. Yeah, that actually worked. Huh. It's nice having this car here. It's a nice little workbench. If you guys are wondering why they're so close together, it's because I figured out if I put them this close together, I have a lot more room on the outside to get in, because this driver's seat is on that side and this driver's seat is on that side. So more room to open the doors and actually walk around. Okay, that's both coolant lines. Oh, we got the drain, the oil drain still. Oh, and these guys. It's a good thing I didn't bend these tabs back down to lock the nuts in place since when we took the cylinder head off. It's like I knew something was gonna break soon. Okay, got everything unbolted. Just need to muscle that out of there, I guess, because it's not really falling out. There we go. And moment of truth. I knew it. Ah, oh, crap. So turbine wheel completely broke off, just like I was guessing. But that means I have to try and get the downpipe off the catalytic converter, because the turbine's probably getting all nice and cozy with the cat right now. Elbow's clear. The first section of the downpipe is clear, so yeah, the turbine must be like all the way down there. Okay, now we got both of them out of the car. It's time to take this one apart and see what the damage is. Also, I want to see what the difference is between this one and the Maxpeeding Rod Turbo, because this is supposedly upgraded from the stock one. I mean, honestly, just the fact that it doesn't have plastic and ceramic wheels is enough of an upgrade for me, so. But let's check it out. So, I want to take the turbine housing off first, and to do that, we need to get this circlip off of the wastegate. Right there. Then this should pop off. And then hope we don't strip any of these 13 mil bolts. This is not an adequate surface to be doing this. There we go. So yeah, big piece missing there. And then it's pretty chewed up in there too. Still spins though. There's like a hole in the side though. Oh, this comes off. Gross. I'm not really sure what all this is, but that's obviously not good. Let's see what the compressor set looks like. Oh, that was easier.
This one looks better. And honestly, I expected this to be the part that failed, because, I mean, you probably can't really tell on video, but this is plastic. I mean, you should be able to kind of hear. I don't know, the reason they made this in plastic is supposedly to increase response, like it'll spool up faster because it weighs so little. And honestly, it's fine because it was, for what it was designed for, it was only meant to hit like 9 PSI max. And it does that, it did that for, you know, 25 years. But, and it'll even handle a little more, but I guess we were asking a little too much of it. But I mean, this part seems fine. It's the, whoops. It's the turbine that ejected. So this is the part that's supposedly ceramic. I don't know, I can't really tell. I mean, it seems like metal to me. Nope. Not magnetic. So the only thing we actually need from this turbo is this oil drain. So let's get that off. All right. But for now, let's swap this over. So this is going to be our oil drain. So we can put our new gasket here. And then bolt on the oil drain. Hopefully this just bolts on. Of course it doesn't. So the drain kind of hits one of these bolts and doesn't let it seat properly. Okay, that only took significantly longer than I thought. So part of the issue was the center section wasn't clocked correctly. Clocked means the relation of the turbo compared to the housings. So I basically had to loosen both the housings and turn this clockwise if you're looking at it like this. Because if I check this against the manifold on the car, the oil inlet was like ½ an inch off. So that put the drain in a different location. So then I corrected that and then bolted the housings back on, but it still needed a little bit of clearancing because that bolt is still kind of in the way. It's mostly because this flange is like super thick. It's like 4 or 5 mil. So I had to shave that down a bit to clearance for that bolt, but it looks like we're good now, so time to continue. Oh, and then while I was at it, I cut these off because these were hooked together, but to install our boost controller, we need these separate, and I pointed this the opposite direction just to make it easier to route the lines later. And so I bolted everything back together. The wastegate is back on, put the C-clip back on. So this turbo comes with this little oil restrictor, and that goes in the oil feed port. So it goes in here. Let's check if this banjo bolt still works. Okay, yeah, it looks like that's fine. Might as well check if the coolant banjo bolts fit too. So yeah, as far as getting the threads right on everything, that's looks good. And then the flanges, yeah, it also looks correct. And then of course these are T2 housings. So it looks a little small actually. I think the factory one was a little bigger in that section. Yeah, that's interesting. So the factory housing has a larger opening here compared to this one. They say it'll make 500 horsepower supposedly. So I think we can get this in place and start bolting stuff back together. Okay, last thing we need from the old turbo is these studs. We need to transfer them to the new turbo. So the easiest way to do this is to get 2 nuts and tighten them together. All right, and then we can try and see if we can loosen it from the bottom one. Ta-da. Yeah, same thing on the other one. All right, now we can transfer them to the new turbo. Now we're done. Okay, we're almost ready to put the turbo back in, but before we do that, we need to find the turbine from the stock turbo. So that went through the downpipe and is probably stuck on the cat somewhere. Hopefully the cat isn't damaged. If it is, we might have other complications now, but let's go find out. Okay, we got the downpipe disconnected, but I don't see the turbine. Are those rocks? So maybe this was the turbine? I have no idea. I mean, some of these surfaces look like they were machined or something.
Is it coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, see, that looks... Yeah, I guess that was our turbine. Cool. There's still more junk in there, so I think now I'm gonna have to take the cat off and try to clean it out or something. Yay! There's still a little bit stuck all up in there. All right, now we're ready for the fun part. And we can drop our turbo in here. Should probably put a gasket first. So we'll use the supplied gasket that they gave us. And careful, SpongeBob. Careful, SpongeBob. Careful, SpongeBob. All these metal lines are nice because it's not like they're gonna like rupture or leak or anything, but they make it kind of a pain in the ass to get the turbo in here. And I need to like line up trying to get the turbo oil drain to go back in the hose at the bottom. So another interesting thing I've learned is the nuts that they use for the turbo sections, cannot make that up. They're not magnetic, so the magnet is freaking useless, so I'm trying to fish them out of somewhere. And that didn't make it to the ground. Okay, we found it. It just rolled down toward the middle of the car with all the rest of the other junk from the catalytic converter. Now we can tighten everything back up. So these are 17 mil nuts. These bottom bolts are like impossible to get to. Like there's not enough room between the housing and the nut to get like the wrench on there. And you can't get the open end on here either.
1 hour later.
I ground that to basically near failure and that still doesn't fit. Although that's, I might add, that's what Harbor Freight tools are for, because you wouldn't do that to a snap-on. But I think this is an issue with the turbo itself. Like there's not enough room to tighten that last nut on there. And you can't get the other end on here either. All right, so after horribly disfiguring this wrench to the point where it's only useful for this one specific task, we got it done. Cool. Now we can try and get all the lines back on. I'm gonna start with the oil line because it's right up top right here. So banjo bolt on the top, or crush washer on the top and bottom. And coolant lines also have copper washers on the inside and out. Okay, we got all the lines bolted up. Not gonna lie, that was a huge pain in the ass. And camera girl had to come in and save me with her little baby hands. Now on to the next complication. The downpipe doesn't have enough room to fit onto the studs that we put on. So I guess I'm gonna have to unbolt it from the mount by the transmission, because I can't bolt that up like that. Okay, I loosened up the downpipe mount and it looks like we got enough room to slide it on now. So we need to put our gasket back in place, which goes like this. So now our gasket's in place. Now we try to get the downpipe on. Yay. Almost there. All right, that's the 4 top bolts. Now it's just the 2 nuts left to go on the bottom side. So, I swear that's the last time I want to drop that. Okay, it's bolted up. Everything is bolted up. Now, I think we can go ahead and bend down these lock tabs to keep the turbo from falling off, I guess. Just do a little tappy tap. Okay, now for what I thought was going to be the most complicated part of this. The compressor housing is the biggest difference in these 2 turbos, primarily because the intake size on the turbo is 2.5 inches on this one and 3 inches on the new one. And then obviously the stock one has like a 90-degree elbow built into it, whereas the MXR one does not. So, okay, so what I think we're gonna need for this is I got a 3-inch 45-degree bend from Amazon. Got a 3-inch 90-degree bend. And then we got a reducing coupler. I think this is 2-inch to 2.5, but this one should be enough to bolt up right there. And then what I'm thinking is we're gonna use the 90 to come straight off the turbo here, and then the 45 so that we end up with our air filter somewhere over here. Obviously these are gonna be way too long as they are, so we're gonna have to trim them down a bit, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. First, we need to find a clamp that's gonna fit on this. Okay, it looks like this one will work. Good enough. Next thing is our boost controller lines, which also don't really reach anymore. So I guess we'll have to find another place to put the solenoid. Okay, now it's time to connect our boost solenoid, and now it's a great time to try out the products that my buddy Christian sent us. Christian's awesome. He is one of the only people I've ever met that was actually into first-gen Ultimas like I was. So we were like the only 2 Ultima enthusiasts in like probably the whole West Coast. But he has a small company that specializes in like 3D printing automotive stuff like vents and gauge mounts and boost solenoid mounts. And he sent us a 3D printed version and a billet aluminum version. And so this should bolt up with our Max style boost solenoid. So let's see how it fits. First we gotta get rid of the old bracket. There's not really a whole lot of options to put it, and I thought down here it's just gonna look awkward, as well as make it kind of complicated to run the lines. So I opted to remove one of the bushings from the power steering reservoir, and I think we're gonna bolt it here. So I'm gonna take our bracket here, and it comes with these fancy dress-up bolts with the little concave washer and everything. And it lets you slide the mount up and down to mount it exactly like you need to. So something like that. Then we can slide it down a little bit if we need to, or slide it up. All right, very nice. They're like, the screws are like the perfect size so they don't like protrude out the back. Very nice design. Okay, solenoid is nice and secure now. Now we got to connect up our vacuum boost lines. So the compressor port goes to the middle port on the solenoid, and the side port goes to the wastegate. So I already got this nice and snug on the compressor housing. So let's run that through there. And it's gonna come up about here. So about there. Just like that. The other line's gonna be a little tricky. Okay, so far the only thing that I really don't like about this turbo is the wastegate. At first it was mounted the other way around, and I guess it works with how they had it, because they had it connected to the turbo by itself. Like their wastegate is connected to the turbo, and it had like those kind of metal kind of zip ties that don't really come apart. It's like they almost like don't want you using a boost controller maybe. I'm not sure, but I mean, everybody's gonna be running a boost controller, so the ports just need to be oriented a little better. Because I even flipped it around because I figured if it was pointing down, that was gonna make it complicated to route the lines. So I flipped it the other way around, and that kind of puts it like facing right into the strut tower and the power steering lines. I mean, it works, but it's not the best placement. So this line's gonna have to come about right here. All right, and that's about it for that. Now we can start trying to put all the intercooler piping back on. All right, so that's everything that needs to be bolted back up. The only thing that we're still missing is a way to connect our air filter and mass airflow sensor to the inlet of the turbo. So we need this to sit more or less here somewhere. And we gotta get this all the way threaded through all this stuff and to meet the turbo down there. So my first guess is gonna be a 90 to come off the turbo. We need that to meet the inlet down there, but as you can see, it's too long. So basically we need to chop some amount off one of the ends here. So I'm just gonna take an inch off this side and see how that works. All right, after 7 or 8 cuts, this is what we're left with. Remember, it's much easier to take a little bit off than to try and have to put some back. So just take a little bit off at a time and be patient. And now I got a little coupler on the turbo. And if we put this guy in place, you can see it's pretty well centered in the space that we have. There's adequate space all around all the other stuff that we have to thread it through. So I think that's looking pretty good. Next part, it's gonna be the 45. And we basically just want this to come out around here, but we need to have enough room for the filter. Probably gonna have to cut a lot of this too. All right, we gave this one the old 108 caliber Phoenix. And we're left with a lot less than we started. And I'll see how it fits. Check that out. Another option you'd have here is just to put a coupler on it, because we have this 45 coupler too. And that would pretty much give you the same result. It would probably be a little cheaper, but I don't know, I think this will look nicer. We're just gonna have to get John to weld this up for us. Another issue is the blow-off valve. This system is obviously still on a MAF sensor, so you can't vent the blow-off valve to atmosphere because that throws off the air-fuel ratio. So I kind of want to plumb the blow-off valve back into the intake, and I bought a little piece of pipe just for that, but I'm not sure how the heck we're gonna go about doing that. So that's basically where that goes. That puts this pipe, it's like already running into the aluminum section that we made down there, so that's not really gonna work. Okay, so I ended up making a little adapter for the blow-off valve. I just cut a piece of the 1-inch pipe that I bought and just kept biting at it with the grinder. Looks like we got it fitting pretty good. So this is the pipe that comes from the blow-off valve, and our little aluminum one's gonna meet up with it right about there. It's looking pretty good. So I think we're ready for welding. Just gonna try and outline around it as much as I can without moving everything around. We can put like a reference line just to help line it up, like that. So same idea, just put like a reference line, and that'll work.
The next day.
All right, we're back from John's, and he did a phenomenal job putting our little pieces together. It looks like an actual professional piece. We even tried bead rolling the ends, but that doesn't really work when there's like curves so close to the edge. So yeah, we tried. But now let's see if it still fits. All right. Like a glove. Slightly concerning glove. It's pretty close to the exhaust manifold there, which hopefully is not too big of a problem. We can move this out a little bit, but with the hose on there, it might still get a little toasty there. I'll try and rotate it out a bit. That should help. Okay, so I can try and put the hose on this end. Okay. We're done. Hopefully.
Sorry, Doc.
The only thing that we didn't connect back is the valve cover breather. And I guess I'll just put a filter on that or something. But it should be good enough to test drive and see if everything works. Oh. Okay, I think something got disconnected. Okay, coupler came off, but just to be expected. Just try to get back to the garage. All right, so we got everything back together and we're doing a little test drive, and of course the coupler blew off and left us stranded right in our neighborhood, so that was fun. We tightened that back up and it seems to be running fine now. The biggest difference is all the big whooshy noises it makes now. They're like more pronounced and just different than they were before. And it also maintains boost a lot better. And I can't really hit high boost right now because it like over boosts and hits what I have set as the boost cut. So I need to recalibrate the boost controller because obviously this turbo is a lot bigger as far as the dimensions of the wheels go. So it's going to be pushing more air at the same, you know, RPM or boost pressure that the old one was. So I was expecting to hit like fuel cut or something in high gear. It doesn't feel like it's hitting fuel cut yet, but it's definitely hitting the boost cut first. So we need to dial that back. I have it on low boost right now, and it's very nice. It's still pretty responsive. I mean, I expected it to be a little laggier, but I can't really tell the difference. It feels about the same as far as response, but definitely smoother power delivery, and I feel like it's faster, but I don't know if that's just me. I mean, it should be faster, right? All right, we're back in the garage, and after letting it cool down a bit, we gave it another once over just to make sure everything's still in one piece and nothing's leaking, and everything looks good. As far as first impressions, I mean, it's way better than stock. That's for sure. However, this is not quite what I'd call a bolt-on turbo. I mean, the majority of the stuff is right. Like, it bolts on, all the flanges are correct, all the thread pitches are correct. The biggest differences are on the compressor side. The compressor on this one's more of a universal design, whereas obviously the stock R34 Turbo is going to be heavily tailored to be a direct fit. The main thing that gave us a hard time was the position of the coolant ports. On the MXR Turbo, they're pretty much in the center of the housing and they're level, whereas on the stock R34 Turbo, the outer one is lower and the inlet is higher, so they're offset. And so getting the lines to like meet up in the middle was kind of a pain, especially on the backside line. Luckily, Camera Girl came to my rescue. I think that's gonna be it for this episode. We're gonna drive it around a bit and just, I guess, hammer on it a little bit and see if anything fails, and get back to you guys in a week or two with a detailed comparison of each turbo and how they've been running, or how this one's been running so far. So stay tuned for that episode. And remember, if you guys want to buy your own turbo, and honestly, in my opinion, if you have an R34 that you just got, this is just basic maintenance. This should be, for the cost involved, this should be part of the basic maintenance that you do when you first get it. This is the stock Nissan Turbo. Plastic and Play-Doh. Would you want to keep that in there even if it's JDM? Versus this turbo, which may be Chinese, but it's better than that. So, in my opinion, everyone with the 34 should be picking up one of these, or even a 33 or 32. These are bolt-on for the RB20 and Series 2 and Series 1 RB25s and the R33s. So this should work for all of them. And if you guys want to pick one up, we have a discount code for you guys. Always do your best. So please check them out, because they did us a huge favor and helped us out and got this thing running again. So thanks for checking out this episode. Remember, always do your best.